All right. We're back. There's a website out there by the name of Naked Capitalism. And they're evaluating this. Eve Smith is the purveyor of that. And she has a couple of things to say about this, especially this newest WikiLeaks disclosure. The New York Times news story that, and by the way, for the record, they're going to try to push this trade deal through sometime around the end of this year. The New American has an article out there by Joe Wolverton from this morning, or yesterday, excuse me. By the end of 2013, or as the end of 2013 approaches, so does President Obama's deadline for approving the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We've never even seen it, ladies and gentlemen. We've seen 2 chapters out of 26, and those chapters are so dire that they read like Armageddon out of the book of Revelation. The Armageddon of our nation. This is a deadly and specifically targeted attack on the sovereignty of the United States of America. Under the guise of a treaty, a trade agreement. And the truth is, only 2 chapters have to deal with trade. The other chapters all deal with how our sovereignty is vacuumed away and replaced in the void with corporate governance on a planetary scale. You ever watch a science fiction movie where governments are actually now corporations? You're seeing it come to life before your very eyes. There's 12 countries negotiating it, and this thing makes NAFTA look like child's play. There's an op-ed in the Washington Times by Judson Phillips. And here's a list of some of the principal criticisms. Quote, Barack Obama is asking for fast-track authority for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. How many times have you heard this president say, we need to pass this right now? Only a tyrant would race through legislation that will truly and ultimately and utterly affect every business, every commercial transaction, every industry manufacturing process, and every job and every American and every tax dollar in the United States of America for the next 1,000 years. Barack Obama is asking for fast-track authority for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Consider that to be another version of you have to pass this to see what's in it. With fast-track authority, there will be no hearings on the treaty. It will be negotiated, then sent to the Senate for a simple up or down vote. No amendments. The Senate will not be able to provide advice and consent because they cannot even offer amendments under fast-track. Less than 1/5 of the Trans-Pacific Partnership deals with trade. The remainder of the treaty governs a myriad of things, including regulating the price of medicine. A few months ago, a mix of conservative and liberal groups stopped the Stop Online Piracy Act, or SOPA, and PIPA. Most of the provisions of SOPA are now included in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Under the proposal of the TPP, American sovereignty would be eroded. American courts would be inferior to foreign trade courts, and disputes between American citizens and foreign corporations would not be litigated in American courts, but in these trade tribunals in foreign nations. You want to sue the company because your baby died? You've got to go and beg a foreign court to hear you out. And the 3 judges are not judges at all. They are merely a rotating pool of lawyers. And guess what? It gets even better. There's no conflict of interest prohibition. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not an ideological issue. The left is against this. The right is against this. The only people who aren't against this are either the trade representatives themselves, the President of the United States, or those people who are completely ignorant of anything going on around them. Let me show you how abusive this is. Ron Wyden, the chairman of the Trade Commission, who has authority, who has jurisdictional authority over all trade negotiations, is barred from having access to this document. He actually had to go out and propose a measure in the Senate to pass a law that would force them to be transparent in the process. And in order to block that law from moving forward, they agreed that he could peek at the documents, but his staff was not permitted to look at them. To make matters worse, here's what his staff representative has to say. I would point out how insulting it is for them, meaning the TPP Trade Representative Group, to argue that members of Congress are to personally go over to USTR to view the trade documents, while an advisor at Halliburton or the Motion Picture Association of America is given a password that allows him or her to simply go to the USTR website and view the TPP agreement anytime he or she may want. If that doesn't set the tone and the tenor for exactly what's going to happen, where you are going to have the Recording Industry Association of America and the Motion Picture Association of America actually overseeing our national policy. Congress is now, for all intents and purposes, a dust mop. They will be useless to us as elected representatives. Sherrod Brown, U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio. He's a Democrat. He issued the following statement that criticizes the Obama administration. After more than a decade of broken promises from NAFTA, CAFTA, and normalized trade relations with China, we can now add a credibility deficit to the trade deficits we've already seen. The leaked document surfacing today only underscores the secrecy surrounding the TPP negotiations and confirms worse suspicions about the direction trade negotiations are heading. It's telling that it is easier for the CEO of a major corporation to access information about the negotiations than the American people's elected representatives. Americans for Limited Government says these new trade agreements will place domestic U.S. firms that do not do business overseas at a competitive disadvantage. Based on these leaked documents, foreign firms under this trade pact will conceivably appeal federal regulatory and court rulings against our own domestic companies to an international tribunal with the apparent authority to overrule our sovereignty. If foreign companies want to do business in America, they should have to follow the same rules as everyone else, no special favors. It is telling that the only apparent way these Pacific nations will enter a free trade agreement with the U.S. is if they are exempt from our onerous environmental and financial regulations that make it cost ineffective to do business here. Instead of making these foreign firms exempt from these burdensome rules, they should just repeal the regulations and make it cheaper to do business here. This poses an even wider problem, though. Obama is negotiating a trade pact that would constitute a judicial authority higher than even the U.S. Supreme Court that could overrule federal U.S. court rulings applying to U.S. law to foreign nations and companies. That is unconstitutional. Goes on to say, this tribunal needs to be removed from this agreement, and no foreign company doing business on our soil should have a competitive advantage created by some dumb agreement over American companies. What is Obama thinking? He is placing international organizations above the interests of our own country. Bill Wilson, the president of ALG, ALG is Americans for Limited Government. Here's what he had to say about this. These new agreements will place domestic U.S. firms. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. That's the wrong quote. I just finished reading you that one. Here's what he had to say about it. At this very moment, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, a trade agreement that could affect the health and welfare of billions of people worldwide, is being negotiated behind closed doors. While 600 corporate lobbyists have access to the text, the press, the public, and even members of the U.S. Congress are kept in the dark. But we don't have to stand meekly by as corporate cronies decide our futures. Concerned citizens from around the world are pooling together their resources as a reward to WikiLeaks if it makes the negotiated full text of the TPP public. Our pledge as individuals is to donate this money to WikiLeaks should it leak the documents we seek. As WikiLeaks likes to say, information wants to be free. The negotiating text for the TPP wants to be free. Someone just needs to release it. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got to ask you a question. Have we reached the point in time, in our history, where we have to pay an organization like WikiLeaks to act as our mercenary, to go out and surreptitiously obtain documents that affect every person on the planet? And we have to, as individual citizens, hire a mercenary to protect us from our own governments? The Electronic Frontier Foundation says this raises, talking about the explanations that have come out of the New York Times, who've come out in favor of this, and they, of course, the New York Times is, they say it's okay to secretly surrender our sovereignty, right? Describing the trade agreement as a trade agreement that could help all our economies and strengthen relations between the United States and several important Asian allies. Ladies and gentlemen, the New York Times has become nothing more than Pravda was during the Soviet Russian domination. Nothing more. It is merely a propaganda tool of the United States government and President Barack Obama. Here's what the Electronic Frontier Foundation, who actually has your best interest at heart, has to say about that. Mayra Sutton, who works there, says, that raises two distressing possibilities. Either in an act of extraordinary subservience, the Times has endorsed an agreement that neither the public nor even its editors have the ability to read. Or, in an act of extraordinary cowardice, it has obtained a copy of the secret text and hasn't fulfilled its duty to the public interest to publish it. Here's what The Hill has said about it. Senate Finance Committee leaders called on Wednesday for Congress to pass fast-track legislation aimed at smoothing the passage of any future trade deals. Panel Chairman Max Baucus and Ranking Member Orrin Hatch, Republican from Utah, Baucus is a Democrat from Montana, said during a trade hearing that they are working on crafting Trade Promotion Authority, or TPA legislation, and are expecting the Obama administration to work with them towards gaining its approval in Congress. Baucus said to me, it's time to pass TPA and to do it soon. So you can add to the list of traitors these two people, Max Baucus and Orrin Hatch. So let's understand and evaluate exactly what constitutes treason. That's what I promised to do during this segment. And we're going to wrap this up with this. Treason is defined as the betrayal of one's own country by waging war against it or by consciously or purposely acting to aid its enemies. Now, I'll even buy that you don't want to go to the word treason. I do, because it would mean that not only could we impeach him and remove him from office for high crimes and misdemeanors, but that he could be punished criminally for his actions. But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, and we'll try to just use the term high crime and misdemeanor. Let's understand what the term high crime and misdemeanor means. High crime does not mean a big crime. High crime means a crime by those who are in high place. High crime is a crime that has at its core the fact that it's a crime only because it is committed by a person who is in a position of authority where that crime can actually cause damage. It doesn't apply to you, because you can't commit a high crime because you're a Joe Six-Pack. Now, you could commit a high crime and a misdemeanor if you're the mayor of the city, because the mayor has authority and he can abuse that authority. And that authority, by its abuse, can incorporate with it damage to others below him. But an individual, an average citizen, cannot be accused of a high crime. They can be accused of a misdemeanor, and they can be accused of a crime, but not a high crime. And a high crime incorporates the following: lying under oath, of course, and the violation of one's oath. So what is exactly an oath? Well, an oath is a commitment and a promise. Right? So let's understand the concepts of that. The president, when he takes office, swears the following oath: I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States, and I will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Now, as a result of that, he is bound by that oath from the moment that it exudes from his lips until the moment that he leaves office. He does not need to be placed under oath in a court of law in order to violate that oath. That oath is already made. It exists in the sphere of the real world. He is bound at this point to tell the truth, to faithfully execute the laws, to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. And he is bound by that oath to not break it under perjury or false swearing, false statements, or a lie. That itself is the violation of the oath. Perjury is defined as a false oath. Oath breaking is false to vows. So let's take this to the next step. When you go to court, you're told to place your hand on the Bible, and you're asked to swear in before the court. The reason that you're told to swear in before the court is because you have not already taken the high position of power, or the high seat of power oath, which this president has already done, because he's already solemnly sworn to affirmed that he will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States, and with the best of his ability will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. In other words, his public statement and any subsequent statement he makes while under that oath, which would be until his day of retirement, is a lie. Any violation of that amounts to perjury automatically, because his oath exists from the moment that he takes it until the moment he retires. And so what he's been telling us about the TPP, what he's been telling us about the TTIP, which I'm not even going to get into in this show, that's a whole nother trade agreement. and what he's been talking to us about with Obamacare and the willful, knowledgeable, and intentional misrepresentation and the lies that have been told to the American people in an effort to sway public opinion to do something that was clearly against their own best interest is perjury, and therefore a high crime. A high crime and a misdemeanor. This is an abuse of his authority. He has the authority, and he has misused that authority in an attempt to subvert, in this case, the laws of the United States, the sovereignty of the United States, the sovereignty of our legal system, the judicial system, which is a division of what? The Constitution, and a creation of the Constitution, and to subvert the power and authority delegated to that government by us, we the people, to Congress. He is placing these multinational organizations and their global corporate governance above our court system, above our Congress, above even the president himself. That is not a misdemeanor. That is an open, blatant act that will aid what? An enemy. An enemy is any entity that would usurp and destroy the sovereignty of our nation and our Constitution. They can be called nothing less. Any entity that is granted that authority and that position or that ability and that power by our own president is a party to his treason. You know, treason has also been defined going back through the ages for disloyalty and subversive actions against the best interests of, in those days, the kings. So if you were subversive to the king's rule, to the monarchy, you were guilty of treason. That was under English common law. In the 13th century, under English common law, treason basically incorporated or umbrellaed any act that was contrary to the king's will. Now, we've modified that to say any act that is contrary to the rule of law of the Constitution, that being, if you will, in effect, our rule of law as a nation. Our Article 3 in our Constitution defines any person who levies war against the United States or adheres to its enemies by giving them aid and comfort as having committed treason within the meaning of our Constitution. The term aid and comfort refers to an act that would betray an allegiance to the United States of America. That could incorporate, furnishing money, weapons, aid, medical aid, arms, troops, transportation, right? Isn't that what we call it when we have an American who supports Al-Qaeda, as an example? The dissemination of classified information? Well, I submit to you that what this president has done is submitted to an international body, namely the TPP trade organizations who are negotiating this, the information and the classified information that will enable them to undermine our national sovereignty. And that is a direct aid and comfort to an entity that is acting against the best interests of the United States of America. The truth of the matter is, every American, and again, I'm throwing the gauntlet down to you, every American and everyone who hears this has an obligation to get their sphere of influence, whether that's one person or 1,000 or 1 million, to immediately begin to apply every ounce of pressure that we can against this House, the House of Representatives, where all impeachment processes begin, to go through the steps and begin to draw the articles of impeachment to get this president's activity ceased. We must force this entity to cease and desist from its behavior. Behavior that will utterly destroy what we call the United States of America. Treason is the betrayal of your allegiance to the United States. And this president has sworn an allegiance which he has violated purposely, willfully, knowingly committed an act against that same allegiance. Sworn and declared, not once, but twice. Any action less than impeachment, followed by criminal charges for treason, is unacceptable. I'm challenging you. I'm throwing the gauntlet down to you. I'm not asking you. I'm telling you this must be done. And the only way that it is going to be done is by a massive civil uprising of Americans of all ideological, political beliefs, persuasions, ideas. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you are black. I don't care if you are orange. I don't care if you're red. I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you are a Buddhist, if you're a Muslim. I don't care if you're a Catholic or a Christian or a Jew. I'm telling you that all of that falls by the wayside right here, right now. Today, we are Americans, and today we will demand this man's removal from office before any further damage can be done to our nation. This will affect you, and it will affect you regardless of whom you love, whom you worship, what you believe, what color you are, where you live, how you live, whether you have children, whether you don't. This will affect you whether you're in business or work for someone else. This will affect you if you take medicine. This will affect you if you live. This will affect you if you breathe. This will affect the very existence of humankind on the planet Earth. This is not me saying this, ladies and gentlemen. Look to the people who act as your watchdogs. Don't take my word for it. Take the information I'm giving you. Do enough informational research to make sure that you are confident and comfortable with the exact exigent danger and the threat of this. And take immediate, and I do mean immediate, action. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how the Republic is under threat, not just from this, but from a host of other areas as well. When I tell you what's going on with ENDA, people are saying, what the heck is ENDA? When I tell you what's going on with the destruction of our environment for the benefit of Obama's green power push and his goal of utilizing ethanol, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is piling up in mountains. Find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org Facebook.com/AmericasVoiceNow, YouTube.com/AmericasVoiceNow, Spreaker.com/AmericasVoiceNow. We'll be right back.